Do you have any sort of practical things you think Israel could do to improve its messaging, or do you think that would be constructive and actually helpful?
Well, first, just let me acknowledge the point. And I think this incredible double standard that is, call it thinly veiled anti-Semitism or lowercase anti-Semitism, infects everything from the BBC to the New York Times to Biden himself. Biden says we must protect this hospital. We must have a ceasefire. I find it insane that more Americans in Hollywood and finance and banking who have parents who survived the Holocaust don't start from, we can't have a conversation. We can't make demands until they release hostages. They took 4-year-old girls hostage. So let's not talk about anything else until Salma Hayek and Julia Roberts on the red carpet at Cannes 10 years ago saying, bring our girls home from Boko Haram. Where the fuck are they now? Where the fuck are they now? There's this double standard, and there's this notion that, you know, even Elon Musk says, I would suggest that Israel be the kindest, display extraordinary levels of kindness. We need a ceasefire. You protect the hospital. Here's the bottom line. Every nation, CNN, and far-left groups on campuses have all decided that the last Christians in the world should be Jews. That all of a sudden we're supposed to call on our better angels, that we're the ones that are supposed to be full of grace, that everyone expects us to be the only remaining Christians in the world. When the Taliban came in or al-Qaeda came in and killed 2,600 or on a per capita basis about 70 people in the U.S., we then went on to kill 400,000 people in Iraq and Afghanistan. Right? The numbers here, where were all these people crying and looking for empathy for the Muslims killed in Syria, the hundreds of thousands, the tens of thousands killed in Yemen? Where were they then? And all of a sudden, they're outraged. They're just outraged and have all this empathy. And you can't find moral clarity in geopolitics. I think we have to acknowledge that you can have empathy for the Palestinians. You can be not supportive of Israel. You can be anti-Israel and not anti-Semitic. I acknowledge that. What the argument I don't buy is that you have to separate Hamas from Palestinians. And when I see a young woman who's been assaulted and is bleeding, being carted around, and I see Palestinians cheering her or cheering them, I'm like, is there really that much separation? Is that real? When I see doctors shuttling hostages in between emergency rooms, not only are they cognizant of these military command posts, but they're actually engaging in the hostage taking. I just find that the hypocrisy here and the double standard is, like, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I feel like I feel like folks like you who have been more out front on this, and it comes at a cost. The majority of young people do not agree with our views. Yeah. And I hear about it every day. I can't imagine how much you hear about it. It comes at a cost. Well, but it's worth it.
Yeah, the thing that's always striking to me is, like, this shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be something so hard to explain. The fact that it's difficult, and the fact that there's always this bittersweetness to when I get positive feedback about it. Like, it's so obvious to a decent human being, even if, forget understanding ethics at a sophisticated level of morality, for this to be difficult, for this to be an uphill battle, is very, very sad. The idea of condemning anti-Semitism publicly is somehow controversial in today's culture, as opposed to, racism, homophobia, sexism. That is obvious. We're all on board. We're all good human beings of the world that can condemn that. But the second anti-Semitism comes up, it faces this double standard. And to me, that is, I'm proud to speak out about it, and I'm happy to. But the fact that it's considered brave to do so is a sad state of affairs for the Western world.
Very weird. I don't recognize. I just had no idea. I'm just absolutely flummoxed and kind of rattled by what I just see as this pool or this depth of anti-Semitism that's the depth of the Mariana Trench that I just didn't know was there. Wasn't expecting it.
Michael, very excited to announce we have our very first sponsor for Ami's House.
Chutzpah vegan dumplings.
Chutzpah plant-based dumplings. They're kosher, they're high protein, and they're vegan. So if you're a religious Jew and you keep kosher, but you're also a wuss, Chutzpah plant-based dumplings.
Great for families. They take 10 minutes to make. They're delicious.
Bubby's dumplings. I don't think any religious bubby in their right mind would make a vegan dumpling, but hey, it's 2023.
And this is a sister brother owned company
From the South.
Yes, we are trying to advertise only sister brother owned companies from the South.
Crafted with barbecue glazed seitan and caramelized onions. Yummy. So LA. So LA.
So they're available in retail. Check out your local kosher grocery store or go to eatchutzpah.com and use code AMISHOUSE, AMISHOUSE, for 15% off at eatchutzpah.com.
You know, there's an instinct in me to say, well, it's low resolution to just throw around anti-Semitism at anything that I might find objectionable. Because historically, I do think in the community, like, we can acknowledge that to throw around that term loosely at anybody, you know, to kick Whoopi Goldberg off the View for not knowing something is very different than a hateful neo-Nazi with a tiki torch, and you can't use the same label for both. So you have to think
Agreed.
about it. But like you said, the only rational, logical explanation for this ridiculous double standard of Israel having to defend itself and the dehumanization of Jews in Israel and around the world and the delegitimization of one state, on one state only, the Jewish state, leaves you to this conclusion that there's this layer of anti-Semitism, uppercase or lowercase, that's going on here.
What I find, so a couple things. In terms of what's happening on campuses, it's rallying, but we tend to see the video clips of the most extreme examples. And as someone who's on the faculty at NYU, I do think it's not quite as bad as people think right now. I think the majority of people are taking a breath, trying to be thoughtful about it, don't want to intimidate other students. And we see the worst of it because it'll go viral if you capture a really ugly moment on campus. And also, I'm much more forgiving of some 19-year-old that has idiotic views. If I had a phone and a camera following me around when I was 19 at UCLA, I'm sure it could have captured some really ugly shit that I said. The thing I find more disappointing is when all these very powerful people become apologists for Elon Musk. And they're like, we've looked into his heart, and I don't think he's an actual anti-Semite. And my view is, well, you are what you say and you do, and when you retweet and promote anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theory, congratulations, you're an anti-Semite. And just because you're a billionaire and you make a great fucking car and can land 2 rockets on 2 barges, that doesn't mean other billionaires get to give you a get-out-of-jail card free. And the standards for a 52-year-old man who's been blessed with what this individual's been blessed with should be much higher. It should be a much higher bar than some sophomore at Cornell. So the kids on campus, I think, are getting what I'd call unfair judgment, the unmasking, the doxing. I'm not sure. They should pay a price. If free speech turns into hate speech, I think they should be brought in front of student committees, and they should either be suspended or expelled. If I, as a faculty member at NYU, started saying burn the blacks or gas the gays, I would be out the next day. I would be out the next day.
Absolutely.
And
Tenured or not, it's this insane double standard for the type of hate.
100%.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, I would call, more administrative action and leadership here, but I'm not as worried about that. I think this is part of, I don't want to call it growth, but kids will have a tendency to really push the boundaries of things. And I also do think the actual problem has been somewhat inflated for clicks. What I find more disappointing is how quiet many of our leaders have been on this. Their lack of, they're worried about people not coming to their movie, or they see it as politically incorrect, or it seems like the youngins have more sympathy for this side, so I'm going to be more quiet on this issue. And the fact that we let the wealthiest, arguably the most powerful person in the world, make these incredibly, in my opinion, disparaging comments, and then be unapologetic about it, although I will give him this, he did apologize last night for those comments, and then have all of these billionaires wring their hands where they want to dox and create a list of the students at Harvard who were at this rally, but they seem to have looked into Elon Musk's ketamine heart and decided he's not an anti-Semite.
So wait, you're a fan of Elon Musk, or I'm just trying to figure this out. Well, here's the thing: he did go. Well, what about him going to Israel and making the rounds and bringing his platform and attention to?
He's cosplaying world leader. And by the way,
he is.
Yeah.
And then he comes back. Oh God, I just.
Well, he's been teasing Scott. He's been teasing the Jews a little bit. He teases us because he'll say things. He'll be like, "I don't like the Jews. I love them."
Yeah,
it's like, I think we can put all the Palestinians and the Jews on Mars. and that's how we can solve this
Yeah,
problem.
there we go.
Yeah,
We need to be an interplanetary
Yeah.
species.
Yeah. I
Here's
do
an
like
idea.
that.
Make this planet more fucking habitable, boss.
But the impulsive nature, you just have no tolerance for that at his level, at his age, and at his sophistication. To know that his responsibility to not just be like oopsie is probably not the best.
I think a lot of this. I think a
Yeah.
lot of this hate and divisiveness and tearing of the fabric of our society can be reverse engineered to algorithms that
Yeah.
encourage us to be really coarse and not to give people the benefit of the doubt, to take gestures not with the intent that they're given, but with an ability to take them to their worst place and then get back in people's faces. I think social media algorithms promote this so they can sell more Nissan ads and more Nespresso pods. And
Right.
I think it tears at the fabric of our society. And I think he is literally, social media is a sewer system. And I think since Elon Musk took over Twitter, he's turned it into the sewage system of a sewer system. I think he's done tremendous. I want to acknowledge, I think he's also done tremendous benefit for the planet. The EV race has been electrified, if you will, by him.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we have to just accept everything. He should be held accountable for this other shit. I think this other shit is just not.
Well,
believable.
Howard Stern style, we have Elon Musk calling in right now, and he wants to talk to you. But I also think about a world pre-Elon on Twitter, and I shake about the idea of the far left sort of Twitter that would try to censor and flag speech, especially in the environment that we have now, where it's sort of everything is there. And I don't know what's better. It's a double-edged sword because, like you said, it creates this cesspool. But beforehand, to imagine the amount of things that maybe not be able to be circulated in terms of, I don't know, God forbid, there would be a bias that wouldn't allow the sharing of the atrocities that we saw.
But what can you say?
7th.
What can you say now? What couldn't you say on Twitter before Elon Musk?
I remember during everything during COVID when there were things that were being talked about that
The anti-vax?
not just anti-vax, but any kind of question or any kind of discussion just was met with this suspicion on Twitter. I think it was like the lab theory and stuff like that eventually became more plausible being talked to. There was this culture of there was clearly I remember even at one point Rogan had executives at Twitter to try to discuss political bias on Twitter, but it seemed to be part of the Silicon Valley, more left of center, and there was regulation of certain ideas that were more right of center on Twitter. That do you not agree with that?
Well, you're talking to someone who pulled their podcast off of Spotify because of Joe Rogan.
Oops. Okay.
Look,
Forget like anti-vax. I mean anything that was like about sort of discussing a certain thing that wasn't. It seemed to be more dogmatic.
I could see a world where on Twitter you wouldn't be able to share any of the October 7th images or videos, and that would have sort of just been inaccessible for anyone who wanted to understand what happened that day. I'm with you, by the way, generally, but
So look, first off, the argument, people immediately go to First Amendment free speech. And I feel like the entire argument has a false context. And that is, Twitter has no obligation, fidelity to free speech or the First Amendment.
Agreed.
If you want free speech and total First Amendment in the Wild West, go to 4chan and 8chan. You can say anything, you can do anything, you can sell anything, you can, get a mail order bride. There's all sorts of...
Really?
There's just crazy shit on there.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It's not the public square. The First Amendment says that the government shall pass no law that inhibits free speech. And even that has limits. Twitter is a private company. And I think everyone has the rights. I think Elon has the rights to say these things. I have the right, and I've exercised my right, not to post on Twitter any longer. Disney has the right to stop advertising. And yesterday at the DealBook conference, he told them to go fuck themselves and said the world will judge them based on them stopping advertising. And it's like, well, boss, 499 of the Fortune 500 aren't advertising on my podcast. Are they blackmailing them? Are they blackmailing me? Is the world going to hold them accountable? It's just it's just such bullshit. And here's the bottom line. Twitter, he owns it. He has the right to put whatever content he wants on there as long as it doesn't incite violence. At the same time, a guy as wealthy as him has some obligation to the Commonwealth, I would think. I think he's been pretty blessed and should have algorithms that say when you are promoting information around health or the elections or hate speech and you're elevating it to create more and more controversy such that you get more clicks and sell more ads, do you have the legal right to do it? Yeah. Is it good for America? No. Should we expect more from you? Yes. So the difference between an opinion and a principle is willing to sacrifice. I sold my Tesla, which I loved. It's a great car. I'm no longer posting on Twitter, which is really hard for me because I'm addicted to Twitter. I absolutely Loved it, and I'm desperate for the affirmation of strangers.
You're on Truth Social exclusively now? Is that it?
That's it. Rumble.
Rumble and Truth Social.
Rumble, and and of course Grindr. But
it's the greatest, much better than better than Twitter. Come to Truth Social. We got Professor Scott Galloway posting beautiful stuff on Truth Social. Listen, I agree with the distinction you're making, obviously, in free speech as from the government versus in the private sector. And I do think, though, the culture of looking at ideas in the marketplace of ideas as certain ideas are so harmful or so violent that the erosion of free speech as a principle by law, I think, does start in the culture. So it's important to just keep an eye on it and keep a emphasis on creating a culture where a marketplace of ideas is paramount and should be put forth as this principle of we respect the idea that we can debate things, even ideas that we find objectionable. More speech is generally better. Sunlight's the best disinfectant. These things kind of start at the cultural level before you find yourself in a situation where we're willing to actually ban speech at the government level. So I'm not saying that they're the same, and I agree that Twitter has the right to do whatever it wants to do. I don't take the PragerU approach of needing to sue social media tech giants because it's a free speech issue. I would agree legally on that principle, but
if you held to that, and I think that's a defensible position. I own the company. I'm a free speech absolutist. It's going to be whatever goes. I mean, there'll be some limits, but pretty much anything goes.
Yeah.
I think if you're consistent with that, I respect that. And then advertisers or users can decide if that's the environment they want to hang out in.
Right.
The issue I have is then he sues the Anti-Defamation League for signing a letter along with 199 other nonprofits saying, what you're doing here is bad. Would you please stop? And he singles out the ADL, strong association with Judaism and Jews in Israel, and decides to sue them.
Yeah.
When Media Matters says, okay, you are publishing content, advertiser content next to swastikas, he sues them to shut them up. So quite frankly, Mr. Free Speech is fucking full of shit. And there just isn't any consistency around this ridiculous false flag of free speech when it comes to Mr. Musk and his actual behavior. He is very willing to try and silence people by suing them because he has the resources to sue people into oblivion. But at the same time, when he says really stupid things, mean things, hateful things, damaging things, and advertisers say, I'm out, he decides it's a free speech issue. There's no consistency here. There's absolutely no clarity here. And so if somebody wants to have, I think 4chan and 8chan have the right to do that. It's vile, weird content. It's a strange place. From an economic standpoint, just being purely a capitalist, the correlation between moderation and shareholder value is positive. The most moderated platform right now is the fastest growing and the most profitable, and that's TikTok. You could literally, if you're just being a capitalist, and let's talk about money, people want moderation. People want an editor to say, okay, this is what makes it on here, this is what doesn't. And Twitter has become much less moderated, and this enterprise value over the last 12 months has gone from $45 billion, if you believe he paid a fair price to it, to now it's being valued at $6 billion. So at a minimum, it's a really stupid business strategy.
He's a sweet guy. Okay, we can move on from Musk. I hear you.
Sorry about that.
No, of course. We keep it open here.
Have you ever met him?
I co-hosted a conference that he spoke at. I didn't interview him.
Awkward. Okay, well,
no, but he has called me names on Twitter. He's called me an insufferable numbskull, and he's actually reached out to me and asked for a meeting. He said that I unfairly attack him, and I said I had no desire to meet with him. And then 48 hours later, I was kicked off of Twitter.
Oh wow. Yeah. Well,
and by the way, I found out later I found out later that it probably wasn't him. It was probably just I got locked out through some sort of. I don't think I loomed that large in his life where he took the time to kick me off of Twitter.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna find peace here. If we can, not before peace in the Middle East, but we can bring Scott and Elon together for some kind of two media personality solution. In